Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the final day of the FEO 2021 Summit. We've got three more great panels lined up for you today, and we're going to get started right off the top with our sponsorship panel. And before I introduce our guests, I want to take the opportunity to thank our sponsors for the 2021 Summit, the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Cultural Industries, Destination Ontario, SmartServe, Event Hub, OLG, and Ticket Pro. Without their support, this summit would not be possible. I'd like to introduce our guests, and we're going to get right into it. First off, Brad McCabe, who is the co-founder and managing partner at Sponsor Circle. We have Victoria Syme, who is the Director of Marketing and Partnership at Harmony Marketing. We'd also like to welcome George Andreopoulos, who is the managing partner at AMP Associate Marketing Professionals, and Michael Bleau, who's the CEO and co-founder of Event Hub, our site host for our 2021 Summit. Welcome, everybody. So we're all in a tough spot, as many of our suppliers and our sponsors are as well. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity for everybody to share some tips on how to stay engaged, how to reconnect, how to find new sponsors, and get back on the game. How to engage digitally as we're getting back together for live events and using our digital and virtual platforms. So I'm going to start with you, Brad. What are some of your tips to our members and people on the line today on how to stay connected and reconnect with those sponsors or partners that you haven't talked to in a while?
I think that's the biggest challenge. If you haven't been talking to them in a while, you need to be touching base. So whether it's just casual conversation, not always a sales pitch, but you really should be checking in to see where their business is, letting them know where you stand. And the other big challenge that we've really seen is a lot of organizations, they're not running their event, but their audience hasn't gone anywhere. You've still got all your fans that are out there who support your organization, and there are different ways to reach out and connect with them. So it's finding the opportunities that you can connect with them, whether through social, whether through digital activation, and those become really interesting ways for your brand partners to actually continue to engage with your audience, even though you're not running your event.
And Brad, as a partnership and sponsorship professional running your own company dealing with this, how have you stayed engaged and connected throughout this process?
Yeah, definitely from our end. I mean, we've got the platform that we've had built where we're able to bring brands and bring properties together and find one another and have them narrowed down and focused on the same objectives. That's been there for some time, and what we've found over the last 12 months is our organizations that we support and the brands that we support, they've had to create these great pivots, and they need to be more focused on the audiences that they have, and they have to have a better understanding of the tactics that they're delivering on. So being able to work with properties to say, okay, here's what you have available as assets that you can deliver, whether your event is stagnant right now, or you're doing a hybrid, or you're going full virtual, being able to format all of those pieces. And then from our corporate standpoint, we've actually pivoted our platform to really focus on those digital elements. So we're working to develop what's been going on in the influencer marketing space and bring that to the sponsorship space, because teams, festivals, events, they're the original influencers. So taking that technology learning and bringing it to the sponsorship industry is something that we're really looking forward to being able to deliver on.
And a lot of people I've been talking to have used a similar type statement, is that their traditional standard broadcast media is kind of dead for them, and they've really transferred everything over to those social platforms. Have you seen a similar process in that?
It's a mix, and anybody who, if you haven't had the opportunity to sit through a Don Mayo session, highly recommend it. IMI International does fantastic updates, probably about every 4 to 6 weeks, where they're looking at audience sentiment. They're walking through where people are shifting in terms of media access. And there's always been, the shiny new ball that everybody's chasing after. Social media is definitely an avenue that people can bring new audience to or deliver content through. But if you've got those broadcast elements, people are still watching TV. They're still listening to the radio, and it's got a monetary value. So it's well worth, looking at where your audience is accessing your content and continuing to provide in that funnel. Because if you start looking at how many people actually are on Twitter versus Facebook, the numbers are incrementally different. Facebook has such a huge following, and Twitter is a percentage of that. So it's making sure that you're delivering the content where your audience is. And I saw a question just quickly pop up there. IMI International, the head of it is Don Mayo. He runs a number of sessions. You can look him up on LinkedIn and then get connected to all of his sessions.
Maybe when you're off there, you can type in the spelling and stuff for everybody in the chat. A lot of us are using social media, but we haven't got into the paid platforms on there, like, paid platform, Facebook advertising or LinkedIn or anything. Can you talk about buying a paid component to really target your audience and your demographics?
There's a variety of different angles to it, and one of the things that's worth doing is looking at what's new in the social elements, because the algorithms that they're driving, they really want people to use the new pieces of what they've delivered on whatever platform it is. So if it's stories or if it's video content that they're looking to promote, if you start doing that yourself, you have short videos that you're delivering, you're actually going to move up in the algorithm to get higher visibility. So that you can do that without actually having to spend any money. So that's well worth being able to look at. And it's a bit of a time sucks sometimes to find out what's new and engaging, and make sure that your team, or you've got a limited team, how you can access those pieces. But when you're looking at the paid elements, it's much more advantageous for a lot of organizations to do a paid buy rather than a push on a post, and just looking at the engagement elements. And you can run some tests yourself, but I would say that if you start looking at narrowing down your audience, you can find the people who are in your community with your interests through any of those platforms. And there's a number of YouTube videos you can watch which can walk you through how to do your placement. And then on the flip side, there's a calculator on a website called Squad, and I'll put it into the chat, where you can look at what it would cost for somebody to buy your audience on any given platform, whether it's Google, Facebook, Twitter. So it gives you a really good sense of the value of your audience. So it's well worth having in the roster of your valuation of what your sponsorships are worth.
Thanks, Brad. I'm going to jump around a little bit now, and we'll come back to you for some more questions and answer. But George, I'm going to go over to you, and can you talk a little bit about the importance of research and knowing your demographics, and what some of your patrons might be interested in? Whether it's you have a beer festival, and it connects well with culinary people, and culinary people are cyclists and marathon runners and stuff like that. So can you talk a little bit about the importance about knowing your audience and knowing the demographics?
Thank you, Dave. That's a great question. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present here today. I also recognize these are very difficult times. So a lot of the solutions we're trying to find are certainly not necessarily one size fits all. Every organization has very specific needs. Some have found success in taking certain actions, whether it be digital, virtual. Others are struggling because of the nature of their events and how they derive that. But to your point, I think the strongest asset that any organization has is its audience. And the more it can demonstrate mastery of that demographic, not only is it helping it understand how it can reach that audience, but it also has a direct impact on the opportunity to sell the value of their audience to their sponsors, because ultimately sponsors are there to support you, support your vision and your mission of what you're trying to achieve, but their specific goals are really targeted to your audience and how they can reach them. So being able to have a clear understanding of, you know, what your audience interests are, it starts, of course, with what you've done in the past. And I think some of the things we're seeing is organizations that have, you know, invested time in understanding their audience in the past are now finding that that information is helping them make some strategic decisions. For those, however, who have not invested as much time, it's still possible, because ultimately you have a community out there. You have people who are very loyal followers who can provide that kind of insight in terms of what are the interests, habits. And, you know, as Brad was mentioning before, you know, going into some kind of a paid social initiative where you're trying to target specific people by interests and those types of demographics can come in quite handy. So I would just conclude by saying that realistically, I would recommend that if you already have that information, great. If you don't, it's a great opportunity to go out to your community and leverage your community to try and really understand how you can delineate the interests and other demographic aspects of your audience.
George, I want to get a little bit into in-kind. And, you know, I remember a great thing when I was in television for a number of years and ran our creative services department. And there was a great thing about, you know, if there's no value, why do it? And you know, I'm kind of a believer in that, and in-kind is great when there's a perceived value to both partners. And I think one of the things that everybody has to think about is coming out of this is some of your partners may not be around when you come back, and you may be counting on those partners for covering some of your operating costs and stuff like that. Can you speak to how to get around some of those, or how to, you know, relook at your costs and look for in-kind value?
Well, I think, you know, let's start by talking about the importance of in-kind contribution, because ultimately, you know, for many organizations right now, many festival organizers, the objective is to survive. You know, a lot of organizations were thinking, if we can just get through 2020, 2021 is going to be a lot better. And now we're coming into the new year with the stark realization that we may need to survive through to December of this year before things get better in 2022. So, as I was mentioning before, leveraging your community is critical. And that includes, of course, leveraging them to try and find new sponsor opportunities, and those include both paid and in-kind contributions. The key is to make sure your network does not dissipate over the course of the next year. And in order to do that, you have to take the attitude of, you need to find ways to support some of these organizations that perhaps can't contribute financially, but may be able to step up to the table and contribute in some other way. Relationships, you know, relationship building is, you know, has always been important in this sector, but never more important than it is over the last 8 months, and I will continue to be over the next 12 months. So I don't know if I'm specifically answering your question, but I would say it's really just a question of, you can't afford to let any opportunity slide by right now. Everything is important. So where you would perhaps not put as much value in something, you know, a year ago when you had paid opportunities that were more important, right now I think leveraging everything is the key to survival.
Yeah, and I guess that was my point. I like to think that both partners have perceived value, and to your point is, it's a difficult time and it's going to be really difficult getting back in at it, is to look at your expense line and see where those opportunities are to minimize those expenses, whether that's through in-kind or whatever, which is what you touched on.
Exactly. And, you know, talk to your sponsors. You know, the reality of it is they're going through as much pain as festival organizers are going through, or event organizers are going through. And what we're seeing in terms of some of the success stories with some of our clients is that those who are able to open into an honest and direct dialogue with our sponsors and involve their sponsors to the level where you can have them be part of that program. You know, give them a little bit more latitude in terms of helping you define how that program is going to roll out. We're finding that those types of relationships really flourish because the sponsor now feels invested. A lot more than just buying visibility. They feel invested in your success because you're bringing them into perhaps an inner circle of how you're looking to survive and leverage your audience, which at the end of the day is still your strongest asset that they're most interested in getting across to.
Yeah, you're right, and you know, we have to remember that, you know, we're in a tough position, but our suppliers and our sponsors are in equally as tough a position, and we hope that they all, you know, make it through this and we all come out on the other end and start to grow our businesses again. I'm going to jump over to Victoria for a bit, and Victoria, you're one of the event professionals as well. You know, aside from your work at Harmony Marketing, you're involved with a number of festivals on the harbor front, and you're really your company really focuses in on experiential marketing. How has that worked out during the pandemic, and I know you have a few examples to share with us about some success.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I can, I'm gonna share my screen, just walk through some examples that worked well, product launches, XM, things like that. So are you able to see my Borat here?
Yep.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Awesome. So I'm just gonna walk through some real world examples, ways that you might be able to put this into practice with your festival event or organization, just to show you what actually was able to happen in 2020 and where I kind of think that XM is going to go future. So I put Borat on here. I'm not sure if a lot of you saw this, but it floated through the Toronto waterfront. They actually reached out to us to ask if we could do this in a week for them, which we just didn't have the manpower. But essentially Borat was launching on Amazon Prime and they wanted to do something to kind of get a buzz. So this was a great PR play. They had tons of coverage. It was more local, but it was a great way to kind of do an installation versus an activation where you're handing something out or having a lot of touch points. So the next one I'm going to go through is Fleur de Ville. Excuse me, and this is an event that we actually work for, so we sell sponsorship for them, and they actually have been able to happen during COVID. They're a socially distant floral trail with pop-up floral installations. So this was, Kim Crawford wanted to promote their rosé wine in a can, and so this was their installation, had over 900 roses on it. But essentially, they actually handed out samples of Kim Crawford wine in August. Now, we weren't in lockdown in August, but they were still able to activate. And then we had National Bank did floral bouquets and kind of asked people to enter in to win a gift card. And then Pusateri's came on board, handed out floral water. And then we had Aperol Spritz we did a media tour, and they did kind of a mixologist. So just ways that actually we were able to do XM during COVID, but we obviously had to make it completely safe. There were no issues at all. You know, we really feel like if your brand is showing that you're being really safe, your audience will you know, abide by that. So we also had Alfa Romeo, so they did a flower bombed car. So again, an installation. So, you know, stop in your tracks, social moments. We had Breast Cancer Society of Canada. This was their floral mannequin. They also had tap machines, so you could donate right on site. Again, you know, not a lot of touch points, reducing the amount of things back and forth touching. I'm going to touch briefly on augmented reality, but obviously this is a whole topic within itself. We're actually looking at some augmented reality opportunities for some of our events in the future. These could be sponsored opportunities as well. Augmented reality, again, is an interactive experience of a real world environment. So you go to a location. So for example, we're looking at it on the waterfront. If you go to a developer, let's say, and you hold up your iPad or phone, maybe you'll see something come to life. So it's almost bringing your audience to your sponsor, but also having this in kind of a virtual way that you're not actually touching things and handing out samples. And then this is an example of IKEA. You can kind of see what a couch or something would look like in your house. Virtual reality as well. I included this because I thought it was really unique. Audi launched in Australia their new A6, and they did a 4-hour video on YouTube of a test drive throughout the Australian landscape. So it really showed you all aspects of the car without having to actually physically sit in the car. So I could see augmented reality booths at events potentially, so that you're not having a lot of people in the same car doing a test drive or doing, you know, seeing the car. This was a way where I didn't watch all 4 hours, obviously, but it was showing you inside, outside, GPS, all the kind of things with the car. Installation, again, I think are really going to be, I think XM agencies are really going to capitalize on this, because again, it's kind of a stop in your tracks moment. The top two and the bottom, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, these weren't done during COVID, but I think it's a great example of kind of those social moments, things that could potentially really gain some traction for your organization. So this was, you know, larger than life food falling from the sky. This was for Antarctica and kind of global warming, essentially saying, see it before it's gone. This again is kind of no touch. It could show up and pop up and then melt in a day. There's no waste. You don't really need brand ambassadors, so it's kind of safe. This is an installation that happened on the waterfront this year, actually, January to February. It was called Sonic Runway. There wasn't really any sponsored opportunities with this, but there could be. You could have signage, you could have safe brand ambassadors kind of flowing people through, or hand something out at the end. But again, I really do think installations are going to be something that we're going to see more of, versus a lot of booths and handing out as many samples as you can. Direct to consumer was something that was big as well, kind of pre-done boxes. So you could have a lot of your sponsors, or if you have an XM agency that has a lot of product that they want to provide, but they don't want to hand it out, you could do these packaged boxes. The one on the left was from the Twilight Zone on CBS was launching. And then the one on the right was actually for a rosé event in Washington. And they had, you could go pick these up if you ordered them online, and you could pick them up from local restaurants. So it also got people into the restaurants, and hopefully, you know, they purchase food at the same time. These both aligned with Black Lives Matter protests. So they both had a portion of proceeds donated to Black Lives Matter. So I also think cause marketing as well is kind of, right now especially, we're going to see a lot more of, you know, maybe a certain % of proceeds will go to it, or you'll see a lot more of those kind of activations on site. One more that I really wanted to point out, this was called Haagen Doors, and it was a partnership with Haagen-Dazs and Amazon, and every week for 8 weeks they launched a new movie. And so they did some really unique things with 3 brands that may not necessarily all work together. So it was Haagen-Dazs, they had Amazon, and then for 2 of the movies they had, so for Ghostbusters, they had a float buster, and it was with Jack Daniels and Haagen-Dazs. And then for Romeo and Juliet, they had like a Capulet and a Montague. So these are just ways that brands have been able to kind of partner together, launch products, or keep in top of mind with their consumer. I do think things like this might, you know, make their way to events, and maybe they'll have this virtual component and then an in-person component where people could sign up for something or get coupon codes for Haagen-Dazs. And my last one was just one that I thought was really unique. This is from Edinburgh Gin, and they, while people were in lockdown, said, let us know on social what you have in your cupboards, you know, all the random products that you have in your cupboards, and we will have mixologists create unique cocktails based on those ingredients. And then they launched those over a certain number of weeks and did kind of live cocktail mixing. So yeah, those were just kind of real world examples. And yeah, I really do think kind of virtual, augmented, and then again, the big push on installations versus an activation where you're handing out as many product as possible. I really think a lot more things will be kind of stop in your tracks.
And for those events that aren't thinking about those experiential marketing opportunities, and if you can't make the correlation of the examples you just seen, you really need to reach out to an experiential marketing company, because we all have what you're all looking for, right? We've got the audiences, we've got the place to demo product, we've got the place to distribute product. And you know, I always say it's so important in your site plan to leave those spaces for last minute engagement, because a lot of time, you know, your companies will come to the events and say, hey, we've got a really great installation, we got a pocket full of cash,
Yeah.
can we come to your event? And you know, a lot of times people are, well, we don't have any space. So
Yeah,
talk about the
absolutely.
importance of that building into your plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of the times too, if they don't want to deal with park permits and figuring out where to put this, if you have an existing event space or location that, you know, they can just come in and plop it down and not have to worry about the logistics, you figure that out for them. Essentially, that's a big value for an XM agency. You're taking work off their hands, essentially.
And the distributing product and stuff like that, I mean, it's a bonus for your audience as well, you know, getting a free pack of gum or tasting some soda drink or something. So it is an experience that's added on to whatever experience we're delivering as an event.
Yeah, and I don't think that'll end. I just think, like, we've had full on-site, like we had one partner that cooked burgers on site. I don't think those will happen. I think it's more of prepackaged cookies, prepackaged food, you know, full cans of something that you're not opening right there, like more of the safety, because food and bev is a big XM opportunity to get and have people taste your product right there. So I think any of the on-site cooking might not happen in the next foreseeable future, but definitely prepackaged, is definitely the way to go.
And adding those prepackaged boxes or meals or experiences to your digital and virtual opportunity is a great opportunity to stay connected.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Michael, I'm going to go over to you. And Michael's also a host of our platform. And last week we talked about risk management. And that's one of the benefits of having a good platform is you've got redundancy built in. And, you know, we had a little hiccup this morning, but here we are with 143 people in our backup room. So, Michael, thanks for everything you've done for us. And we really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to save some of the digital world for you. You know, you guys spend a lot of time digital and virtual, and you also spend a lot of time in the runs and sporting events and marathons and stuff like that. A lot of those events have been canceled, just like our events, but a lot of them have gone virtual or, you know, go at your own pace, and medals are still being sent out and stuff is still being run.
Sure.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And before we get into that, I do want to say that before COVID, Event Hub was all about live event sponsorship. We actually run a platform that is very much like the, if you will, the Airbnb of sponsorship. And one of the ways we see this being very, very important as people are trying to replenish sponsors and especially exhibitors and vendors who may have had a ton of turnover from last year is being able to just source those opportunities better for your organization, because you're going to have to do a lot more new sponsorship sales with potentially a lot less team and bandwidth than you have previous years. So we feel like this will be very helpful, and essentially our platform set up to allow, we have 22,000 sponsor users looking for opportunities, and then we give you management tools to streamline all that, automated applications, payments, paperwork, logistics. And then what we did in COVID was we said, oh man, we don't want to go out of business. All of our customers are about to go out of business. What if we built a virtual venue that was friendly for consumer events? And the events that have been successful with us have had some really key elements among them that have allowed them to both have compelling programming and allow them to sell, monetize and really sell a good chunk of virtual sponsorship. The way they did that was they created exclusive content and exclusive experiences. So to give you an example, can y'all see my screen? I'm gonna go to preview mode here. So this was, we worked with the Scotiabank Toronto Waterfront Marathon, and what they did was they created exclusive content. So they had live streaming throughout, right? Where they had a race director, former winners, things like that. For festivals, this would be really great use case for food and wine festivals. When we have them on the platform, is they'll do cooking demonstrations. You can get right up on the chef, way closer than you could at a live festival, because you can be 6 inches away with a high definition camera. And then they were able to feature all of their sponsors within that. So whether you use us or someone else, the key is being able to give your sponsors top of mind impressions and branding, but then to put the great panel for me that being able to actually engage live and interact with attendees is key. So being able to have those video chats and things like that are also very, very powerful.
Yeah,
And that,
we
I
had
mean, I don't,
we
yeah, go
had our
ahead.
marketplace yesterday, and you know, it was great popping around booth to booth, actually being able to talk live, and you know, seeing a group
Mhm.
of people in the room sharing the experience. And that was an important aspect for us, is we wanted some of that networking, because you know, our conferences are all about getting together and sharing experiences, and the networking component is something we wanted. And I thought it was great popping booth to booth and talking to people, and you know, saying hi and sharing stories, and you know, we're all in this together. And sometimes it's just great to talk to one another, and you know, see our suppliers, and you know,
Oh,
share.
100%. You just can't get it, you just don't have that feeling and that engagement and that excitement when you're seeing an advertisement versus when you're talking to someone live, especially if they're a BA, we call brand ambassador and experiential, or a product expert that's giving you that personal touch. And especially when you're at a festival, if you're having craft vendors that are able to actually show you the jewelry they're making and do live demos of jewelry and things like that. If you have, maybe it's a car specialist who's actually showing a live car on video. Things like that are really more compelling when you are going digital. And as far as trends, by the way, I know that we wanted to talk a little bit about trends. No one is going back to only live from everything that we've seen. All of the research indicates that we're probably going to be stuck in this virtual world for the next 2 quarters. And then people are going to be going to hybrid events and slowly adapting hybrid to be supplemental instead of a major programming anchor as things go on later this year and then to next year. Is that what you found as well, Dave?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you know, I don't think we can ever replace the live experience. I think we all agree on that. But I think now that we've been down this virtual road and people are starting to get comfortable with it and starting to see some of the opportunities that we're talking about today, you know, I think you're right. I think if you haven't engaged, if you haven't gotten digital, if you haven't gotten virtual, it's time to really look out and source it out. Because, you know, I know at the beginning we all thought it was going to be too expensive. We don't have cameras, we don't have high powered technology, but you know, there really are affordable alternatives. Zoom and you know, IT cameras have really changed the face of broadcasting. I mean, you've got a television station in your computer, and you've got to, if you don't know how to access it, you know, find volunteers or engage professionals to get in there and help you build something to get out there.
Yeah, that's right. And again, the other point is that well, it was mentioned that you can do things yourself in terms of the experiential activations and things like that for your sponsors. But the truth is, you're not going to have the time to do it yourself, and you won't do it as well in the same amount of time that a professional experiential agency would. So being able to partner with some of those folks is really the way to scale up and leverage your own efforts. Again, especially in this year, a lot of folks are dealing with reduced staff and just needing extra bandwidth to really put together digital and live programming when we're going hybrid, and also selling more sponsors. That's something that, you know, you're going to be doing as the executive director, as the owner of your event, because you have the most compelling case to come and be a part of that event than, you know, having your coordinator do it or someone else on your team, or you're going to be liaisoning with your sponsorship agency much more directly and intensely in other years to really team up on this to make everything happen and hit your targets.
I'm going to jump back over to Brad, and we've got about 10 minutes left, and we'll just sort of go around the horn. Brad, what's your sort of last piece of advice that you want to share with our people? Just a reminder, everybody, if you've got a question, throw it into chat. We'll be glad to put it up. But Brad, sort of your last impression to share as people are listening with us today.
Sure, thanks, Dave. I mean, I think the big element, and we've said it a couple times through here, is, you know, you've got an active audience. So it's making sure you take the time to figure out how to communicate with that audience ongoing. As you know, Michael was just saying, we're probably not going to go 100% back to the way things used to be. There will be hybrid activities ongoing. And I was listening to the head of partnerships for Real Madrid, and he was talking about the fact that 98% of their fans never step foot inside the stadium in Madrid. So they've been trying to figure out ways to connect with that audience in a virtual way for some time. So it's making sure that, you know, you understand where your audience is coming through. And there's so many different ways to engage with them, you know, even from a sampling standpoint. Talk with the agencies who are doing sampling traditionally with you and find out how they're pivoting through this. They may not be able to hand out on site, but they're looking at digital activations to do it. They're looking at different ways to access it. I was talking with an agency last week, and they were going through, and they've got a panel that they've been sourcing, but they're looking for the right audiences that match up with the marketing needs of their brands. And you've probably got that if you can detail to them who's been coming to your event and know your demographics and share that back. You can be a throughput for them. So you can still do sampling to your audience, just not on site.
And George, I'm going to pop over to you for your final sort of roundup or last thoughts that you want to share with everybody.
Well, thank you, Dave. I think from my perspective, the importance of maintaining a creative aspect to how you can pivot from the face-to-face to the virtual or other ideas. I noted just a couple of weeks ago down in the US in New Orleans, instead of having a Mardi Gras, they actually had homes decorated and they went a completely different way. Got a lot of media attention over that. But creativity is very important, as is working your network. Your network is your lifeline. You know, the people who have supported you, who believe in your vision, who believe in your mission, don't be afraid to ask them directly for help, finding new sponsors even. You know, there are people that your network know. And in the past, your network has always been someone you've relied on, but maybe not necessarily taken a more direct approach in asking for help and really working. This is the time to do it. I would say for the people that you do know, especially your sponsors, work closely with them, talk to them, make sure you're involving them in the process. I think that goes a long way towards being able to really validate their interest in doing what you're doing. And then, of course, your audience, continuing to understand that your audience is what matters to your sponsors. Make sure that if you have that information, you're keeping them involved in the evolution of your product. And if you don't have that information, there are ways, as Brad pointed out, that you can certainly try and reach them through social media and other targeted means.
And I think you brought up an important point, George, is that personal connection is still going to be important, probably more important than ever. So reach out to your volunteers for connections and ideas, and go as deep as you can, because we're all going to need the help and support.
And everyone's in the same boat. So at the end of the day, there is a communal need to kind of work together to get through these next few months.
Victoria, over to you. Final thoughts on experiential marketing for those that haven't thought about it before. How do you start, and what would you suggest?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, basically it's Google searching. Start at Google, get an Excel doc, same as you would with building a media list or anything like that. And it's really searching, you know, depending on what your city is, or, you know, we look at XM agencies in Ontario, sometimes even into, you know, other provinces to see if they have, depending on, obviously in the past they would do province-wide or cross-province promotions, but see if you know, reach out, cold email, ask them, say this is what you're planning to do. Do they have any clients that are looking to do an activation, or even if they have product, would they be interested in giving you a certain amount of product for you to put into a direct consumer box, or whatever it may be. But really it's just building those lists and starting to create relationships. I will say that XM agencies have a massive turnover rate even before COVID. So I find sometimes with one project, I could work with 4 different contacts, but it's reaching out to multiple people at one agency, because they might all have different clients and sometimes they all don't talk to each other. So as many contacts as you can get. And then just in a general note, I just wanted to say, never underestimate the value of good PR. You know, get your stories out there, even if nothing's going on. We've actually had a lot of success this year with micro influencers. So I'm talking like 20K to 20K less, or 20 to 30K, that have such a great relationship with their audience. I would definitely look into kind of that micro influencer, hyper local, things like that. But yeah, and anyone, I know my name doesn't say it here, but I'm going to put my info in the chat. It's Victoria Syme. My name is not Harmony. This is just the company account.
And everybody's been throwing some great information in chat from the panel, so thanks very much. The other thing I was going to say, Victoria, and you know, being a broadcast background, I still read the paper. I like that feel of it in my hands. But the one thing I've always done is I've always looked at thank you ads. And, you know, event sponsor, look through those lists and see who in your community is involved and engaged, and cut them out, keep them in a file, because if they're giving to one place, they're probably interested in being involved and connected to community.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it shows you who's, you know, who's able to kind of promote a product or who has something new. I mean, you know, even for Fleur de Ville, we're finding partnerships that we never thought would be a fit, but it works really well. And it's such a unique opportunity to create a bottle out of a flower or lipstick or something, you know, like something you would never think possible. You know, I hate the term think outside the box, but really think outside. You know, you never know what a partner's goals and objectives are, and they might work for your event in a way that you never thought before.
And Michael, I'm going to jump to you for last comments, and I'm going to sort of direct one at you as well. But and Victoria sort of mentioned it, but I think at the end of the day, we all have to remember that we're storytellers, and our event tells a story, whether it's a cultural gathering or a community group, or if it's a service club. There's a story to be told, and that story is important to get your message out there.
Yes, absolutely. It really is all about messaging and storytelling. Convincing your audience and making a compelling case for engaging in your event live and or virtually, or just virtually if that's the option available to you for this cycle. So great point, Dave. And then two huge points I wanted to make, well, hopefully huge to me. George had some great ideas and content around the in-kind sponsorship piece. The caveat I want to emphasize on top of that is it has to make sense for your budget and fill a line item on your budget, not just be an in-kind giveaway. Because if it's not filling a line item that's critical to your budget, you're just giving them a free marketing slot to do promotion to your audience. And the second piece that ties right into that is you absolutely can and should be charging versus just giving away as a complimentary thing, virtual and digital sponsorship perks, because it costs the sponsors so much less time and money to actually activate those. And they do have budget allotted for digital marketing. So definitely don't feel like you can't charge a significant amount for your digital sponsorships. And you have that audience reach to show that you have, you know, your mailing lists are your valuable commodity to essentially say, look, I have a 20,000 person mailing list, 10,000 person mailing list. We can do dedicated blasts. We can do promotions on our socials to have this much reach to really prove the value out there in complement to your live sponsorship.
Yeah, I think it's important. You know, people don't think of it, but to me, an important place to look for sponsorship opportunity is your expense line, and what can you, you know, what can you go out there and chip that down with, and like you said, to me, a partnership is there's a benefit for both sides. Then there has to be.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, your vanity URL is now live and working again, so we're good there.
Thanks very much. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. A lot of great information shared, and hopefully all of our people online have found it helpful and useful, and will reach out and make connections with all of you. Thank you very much for joining us today.